What it do, Dr. Jabari Evans signing in. These are my office hours. I want to talk to you all today just quickly about this whole Diddy trial. Um, I know I'm not the first, nor am I going to be the last person to comment about this stuff, right? But it's completely dominating the news cycle, and I felt like it was useful for me to put some words out here. Um, so as Diddy faces these serious federal charges of sex trafficking, racketeering, and abuse, we find ourselves not only watching a legal spectacle unfold, but witnessing a digital feeding frenzy that commodifies his downfall in real time. Now, while mainstream platforms like CNN, NBC News, and ABC News are providing steady legal coverage, ABC even launched a dedicated podcast called Bad Rap that I've been listening to recently. The ecosystem of monetized discourse surrounding this case has extended far beyond legacy media, from TikTok personalities to YouTubers. There's no shortage of voices narrating, dissecting, and reacting to each twist of this indictment and the trial that is soon to ensue. Now, what feels really eerie to me, though, particularly as somebody who was in the music industry, is how many of the same voices that once benefited from proximity to Diddy are now sort of vilifying him. The Breakfast Club, for instance, now sends Lauren LaRosa to sit in the courtroom, deliver these daily dispatches, despite the show's roots on Diddy's own Revolt TV, as well as him having done an interview as recently as September of 2023, where he was invited to promote his album. This was just weeks before Cassie Ventura, however you want to kind of refer to her these days, filed her civil suit against Diddy that was eventually settled. And this makes one question clear to me, right? Is like, are we really reckoning with Diddy's harm, or are we just repackaging it for clicks? Um, Further complicating this is the absence of video from the courtroom. Now, as a scholar that thinks about mass communication and journalism and media representation and all these different things, um, I'm drawn to thinking about the long-standing federal rule from 1946 that bans the recording of criminal trials. We're now relying on secondhand interpretation, note taking, daily summaries, reactionary content. But the misinformation that's sort of everywhere, it makes it really muddy ethical waters. And you can't really see what's happening. There's a temptation to believe what is being editorialized by those who are not actual editors. Um, Also to perform outrage, right? And this all is in line with today's cloud economy, and it becomes all more lucrative, slippery, as well as ick. Um, and just disturbing details of the indictment, ranging from forced labor to sexual abuse. Uh, these are horrible, but the more we hear about them, and the more um we hear colloquialisms like no Diddy, or we hear folks talking about freak offs, and sort of just throwing these things out there in their everyday language without really putting any weight on them. It feels very hollow, and not because these allegations aren't serious. It's because so many of those who are now vocal were very much complicit, very much silent, and in many ways benefited from the very culture that Diddy helped shape. Right? I can remember as far back as me being 18 years old and going to prom. 17 years old. Let me not date myself worse, right? Um, Going to prom and asking my dad to get me a tux that was based on the suit that Diddy had wore with Jennifer Lopez when they were on the red carpet at, I believe, the VMAs. If it wasn't the VMAs, maybe it was the Grammys. I don't remember quite fully. But I remember, admiring Diddy and his entrepreneurial endeavors, buying Sean John from Tony Sports when I was a young kid on the south side of Chicago, and beaming with pride when I went down to Sam Goody or Coconuts and I bought a Bad Boy album. Like, it was a badge of honor um, to sort of be associated with brands and cultural products that were created by this man. But then also, in many ways, we help shape the culture that Diddy exploited by giving him this folklore around his ability to party and his ability to function. And in that way, this coverage becomes part of a very system it purports to critique. It's a parasitic sort of form of justice where justice isn't always the goal, visibility, or even virality is. And at some point, we must ask, are we witnessing accountability or just another round of opportunistic uh, performance by our media outlets that are wrapped in performative concern? Uh, the trial of Sean Combs, Puff Daddy, Puff, P. Diddy, Love, whatever you want to call him, is not about just the alleged crimes of a powerful man, but also the economy of media content that is being built around his collapse. And that's something that I wanted to sort of bring to the table. I'm not sort of sure, what to make of this as we're still in the early stages of this trial and different witnesses are being brought out over and over, from Kid Cudi to Diddy's a former assistant to the Punisher, the male prostitute that used to help them get their freak offs. um, and the details of the testimony gets more and more salacious, more and more hot and heavy, and I'm still trying to make sense of this stuff. What I do know is that a lot of people surrounded themselves around Diddy. And a lot of folks admired, wanted to be attached to, or even wanted to associate with Diddy. And those same people who so vigorously promoted parties that he did special appearances at, or took selfies with him, or bought albums, or did interviews with him, or gushed when he retweeted something that they said about Ciroc or De Leon. Now those same people are sparing no expense to crack jokes or to create content around this trial, and in hopes to benefit or clout chase. And I think this is sort of what I see as sort of a context collapse between legacy hip hop culture and clout chasing hip hop culture. And, as much as I want to decry Diddy's association with the golden era of hip hop, that doesn't mean I'm necessarily in line with performative political correctness either. And there has to be some medium in between. All that said, feel free to hit me up with any questions, concerns, or comments at Knowledge Since 82 or at Dr. Knowledge, depending on what platform you're on. On Substack, here is Dr. Knowledge, DRNALEDGE. I might post a little more about this on YouTube, but for right now, that's what I have to say about this Diddy thing. So many people have been asking me about Diddy, and I haven't really been able to make sense of it. And I think that's the millennial in me, um, just not being able to reckon with so much of my childhood being scorched in cancel culture these days, but also just having a reckoning with things that happened in the dark coming to the light. Again, Dr. Jabari Evans, Dr. Knowledge, signing off. Peace.